Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor, the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I want to tell you to subscribe to Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. Legal in the state of Florida. Play it throughout the NBA playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, NFL season when that comes back around. MLB is available every day. PGA, tennis, and more. You can check it out. It's prizepicks.com. Use the code F-I-V-E. Put down 5. Get 50 to play right away. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yeah, 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs, down to Biscayne, kept the flow playing, got it all band, y'all seen the block, stop with one hand, and Pat we trust, it's power have the guts, we're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
We're back. It is the offseason. Today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Digital Adel. You can follow him at Digital Adel. And we are, again, fully in the offseason. Watching the other NBA playoffs. Well, the NBA playoffs go on without the Miami Heat. Starting to get into some transaction talk. As we record this, we're waiting to see if Jimmy Butler will advance to the second round. James Harden. That should be another episode. I'm going to write that one down. Could we please stop this crap about comparing James Harden to Dwayne Wade? Another pathetic Game 7 for James Harden, who I did this, I compiled this like 2 years ago, and it's just gotten worse, okay? I know he had a very good season at a very old age, but he has had more sub 35% shooting games in the postseason, like 4 times as many as Dwayne ever had, okay? And again, Dwayne, of course, won 3 championships, which also should be a big part of that conversation. So again, let's just stop. I had the Clippers as my dark horse, Adele, to possibly win the championship the way they look late in the season. But I did say, and I said this on our Off the Floor Discord, which I'll introduce even more as we go forward here. I did say, is it possible that playoff Kawhi can wipe out playoff Harden? And as it turned out, the answer is nothing can. In fact, playoff Westbrook wiped out playoff Harden, and he was on the other side of this thing, and Denver goes to the next round. So we're waiting to see what happens with Houston and Golden State today, and I'm sure some Heat fans who are still paying attention to basketball at this stage will be interested in that. But Adele, we want to talk about Tyler Herro again today. No big surprise. It's going to be a big topic of conversation here, and I'm just going to sort of go around the network as we're going to get more commentary from more different people as we go forward, give Greg, Alex, and Brady a little bit of a break here, since we ride them hard during the regular season, and just get into what exactly you do with Tyler Herro if you're not planning to keep him at a huge number going forward. And just for some context off the exit interviews and the conversations in the media that the players had, Tyler indicated that he doesn't need to have the extension offered to him, which would be a 3-year, about $150 million extension. He doesn't need it offered to him by this October. And so it doesn't sound like he's going to pout and quit like Jimmy did. So that's good. Okay. Avoid that. Although that would have been great for downloads. But that's not him. I mean, he was called fragile last year and he went in and worked. And that's one of the reasons that I have more respect for the way he handled things than the way that Jimmy handled things. But he also said that if they wait till the next year, it could cost more, or it would cost more. And, there is actually a reason for that, because he can get a 4-year extension if he waits one more year at a bigger number. But also it indicated to me that my takeaway from it was that he's planning on getting every dollar no matter what it is, right? That's the way he's setting the stage for this negotiation. And my belief was that the best way to handle this from the Heat side is to make him an offer this time around, but not the full. So something in the neighborhood of 3 years, and I don't know, I'm going to spitball here. I did this for Jimmy and it never got to the table, but like 3 years, 110. Okay.
Right.
Something along those lines, like 37.5 per year. And then see what his reaction to it was. Do you want to take the money, not take the risk of getting injured, of having a down season, of playing on a team that's not very good again, which would hurt your value, and see if he'll actually bite on it? That was my feeling of the way that this should be approached, and maybe it is how they will approach it. I don't know. Okay,
right.
They're not going to offer him the 3-year $150 max now, and I don't think they should. You can't offer that kind of money to a guy who is essentially a one-way, for the most part, a one-way player. Your thoughts on what they should do this offseason, and then we can get into, okay, if that doesn't work, then what do you do?
Yeah, this offseason is going to be pivotal for the Miami Heat. I think they really need to rethink their approach overall, because I don't see this player. For example, we've talked about KD before as a potential target. I don't see them a KD away from being contenders when your core is Bam and Herro. And that's no slight against what Bam does, because I think he's all world defensively. It's just when you look at the elite teams that are making a run and you see they have two bigs, well, you think to yourself, Miami has two bigs. But it only works because they have guys on the perimeter who can actually defend, right? Mm-hmm. So Herro's your de facto number 2 to Durant being your number 1. Where's your perimeter defense all around coming from? You don't really have it. So without an elite facilitator, I think this team is right back where they are again next year in the same predicament. And do they make the playoffs? Maybe barely. Do they get swept again? Probably.
Right.
So I think they need a hard reset. And if not one of two of them of Herro or Bam are probably going to have to be relocated elsewhere. Is my understanding.
And there are more fans who've come around to this position. Now we know that there are Heat fans in the Twitter space that take a side between Herro and Bam, and have for a while. But I think that there is a growing consensus that having the two of them at the top is not going to get you anywhere. And also having Wiggins as the third is probably not going to get you anywhere. And that's, again, another topic for another day. It's interesting when you talk about adding Durant and where that would get you, because I go back to 2016 when they took their sort of biggest shot at him. Right. And Spo impressed him in the meeting they had when they really didn't have a lot on the roster. I went back and looked at it. Remember, Dwayne was unsigned and, of course, would end up leaving. And he was irritated that they went after KD and irritated that they re-signed Hassan Whiteside in the first 5 minutes of free agency for the max, which, again, revisionist history here, but a lot of fans were in favor of that. They were afraid of losing him to Portland or Dallas, even though there was the concern in the back of your head that once he got the money, he would kind of shut it down, which is precisely what he did. He went to play with his koi fish so, on Snapchat. But, you know, you look at that roster that they had at that time, and the roster they ended up taking into 16-17, and there wasn't a lot on it. It was Whiteside and it was Dragic, basically. The rest of it got added when Dwayne didn't sign, when he signed with Chicago. Within about an hour, the Heat, Andy and the crew had this group of players lined up, which was everybody from Dion Waiters to James Johnson, Kelly Olynyk, I believe was that year. Yes, Olynyk.
Yes.
And then Dion was signed to 2.7. He was a bargain at the time. It was the next year that was a problem. And of course, the re-signing of Tyler Johnson to the poison pill offer sheet, which was a huge mistake. And the way that has been put to me is that it was kind of a group decision. I know that it's been framed as one person's decision or not, but it was kind of a group decision on that one. And they went ahead and did it. And of course, that didn't work out either. They signed basically a bunch of players who were replaceable to big money. Now, not all of them in 16. Waiters was cheaper in 16. James Johnson was cheaper in 16. They became more expensive when they decided to re-sign them in 17. That was really the bad move after they went 30-11. But when you look at that roster that KD almost joined, there wasn't much on it. Like
Yeah.
at least have Tyler and Bam now is honestly more. I would take Tyler and Bam over Whiteside and Dragic probably. I Goran maybe over Tyler by a hair, but Bam over Whiteside by a lot. Okay, so but the issue is KD is 9 years older.
Yes.
That's the problem.
That's
right?
the problem. And the teams around the Heat and around the league, I feel, are a lot deeper and they're a lot better than the teams were at that time. I feel like there's a lot more talent at the top of the league than there was at that time in terms of like it being spread out 1 through 8.
Yes. And especially in the West, but again, that tends to be the case. But I think you look at the problem, I think, for any team in the league right now, and this is, again, a larger NBA discussion, is that the teams that are edging towards the top all have more assets to go. And particularly Oklahoma City, which really would need to commit the all-time fumble to not win a championship in this era. After you can argue that they already committed one by not winning one with Durant, Westbrook, Harden, and Ibaka. Okay, now, and that was basically because they decided not to pay Harden the extra $3 million, which that's the one thing I will take James Harden's side on. He was certainly worth that money. So if you take a look at where those teams are, that's, Houston has a lot of room to grow here. OKC has a ton of room to grow. That's what's concerning on the West. And on the East, I mean, Cleveland is not all that poorly positioned. Their contracts are not exorbitant. They could probably move Garland if they needed to, and really, as we've seen, not miss a beat. And then you take a look at Boston. Now they're going to come back some because it's clear that they're going to trade off here, and then that probably Drew Holiday and Porzingis are the most likely to be moved. But as long as you have Tatum and Brown, you probably have a chance to rebuild something pretty quickly. The Knicks numbers are going to start getting bigger, but they probably can afford them. And, Indiana, who nobody talks about, I mean, this is the second sort of reasonably deep playoff run that they've made, and they've shown some flexibility and some creativity to kind of keep moving forward. So I'm with you, and that doesn't even include Detroit, which we saw sort of pick up. And if Orlando is going to go in more now, which it sounds like they're going to with Paolo and Franz and Suggs, and then kind of figure out the rest, now add to the rest of the group, that they'll be more formidable. So I'm with you on that. So I guess, again, that's a Durant pod that we've got to do, but it does play into the Tyler thing. So on the other side of this, I want to get into what you would do now. So your feeling is, would you even make Tyler an extension offer this offseason?
I would make the offer because there's a way to do this at the right number where you could fill out the roster to protect him defensively, add a more playmaking lead guard, perhaps in the draft. We'll be able to talk about that. And because there's going to be guys potentially in this draft, if you're willing to maybe move up, and if you can find a trade partner and willing to dance, or if a guy falls to you, like a Ben Serra, for example, who I really like. I think he's got potential with the positional size at 6'5", 200 pounds, that he'd be able to be a sturdy enough defender, a great facilitator so Tyler could move off ball. You'd be able to start building the semblance of a cohesive unit. You would just have to balance out the rest of the roster with functional size. Like the Duncan Robinsons, as you know, is probably going to be gone. The Haywood Highsmiths, you'd have to consolidate those into like one player, like Highsmith and Duncan together type of player that can do both, more of a two-way 3-and-D type player. So you can build a roster that way as long as you have the right guy that's like a lead guard that can be a two-way player with Tyler. You could do it at the right number, but that's the key.
Yeah, that is the key. And I don't think 150 is the right number.
No.
But again, players
not under this CBA. That's the important part too.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, you can't have 3 maxes anymore. You just can't. So if you're deciding that Herro and Bam are your maxes, then you're maxed out. I think that's pretty much where it's at. All right, I do want to tell you, not about a sponsor here, but about where you should be this offseason. If you want to find Adel's commentary on the draft in particular, and also all this transaction talk, we have channels for that. That's the cool thing here. Like, you don't have to go to Twitter and see what you can find. We pretty much take everything that's on Twitter and put it on Off the Floor anyway, so it consolidates it all for you. You can see not just what the Heat are looking to do, but what other teams in the NBA are looking to do. And, I can tell you there are people in the Heat front office that check out off the floor. So why aren't you? It's $2.99 per month, and you can cancel it anytime. Link right here in the description. And we'll also start doing the stage shows on there as well. You can go to host updates, catch up on everything else that is going on that day. It looks like we got to update some of this stuff here that we've got on the screenshot because we've actually added some things since there. Also, you can see Sean and Eternal argue all day long, which is also always fun. Okay. So if you're not going to be keeping him long term, you don't have a choice with Bam on the extension. It's already made, right? So you know what his pricing is. You start shopping Tyler aggressively now? Is that what you do? And where? Let's put it this way: what teams do you think would bite?
So that's a great question, and I don't want to steal the Alex Toledo. It's a tough question, but there's just a lot of factors with that, right? Like you would need a team that is going to be willing to give you something in terms of asset value, that's going to be enough to make it worth your while, because at this stage, you're looking for a number one guy. And there's no team that's going to give you a number one guy back for Tyler, but you need to get enough ammo, so to speak, to be able to trade up in the draft for who you think could be that number one guy. So if we're looking at teams that have draft capital, let me pull up the teams with the draft picks here for 2025 NBA draft picks per team. All right, let's see here. So according to Real GM, we have teams. We already know the main players, right? Like, Oklahoma City, they have a ton of draft picks. Do you want to go shopping in that well again? Do you think they need to add Tyler Herro, or he would be an asset on that team? I don't even think he would be one of the top 3 players on that team.
Maybe not. I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, I
tough.
think his skill set would upgrade some of what they have. So in other words, Shea's an elite two-way player, right?
Correct.
He could cover for Tyler defensively in the backcourt, and Herro would make Shea even better, I think. But part of what's made OKC what they are is having Lou Dort back there to defend the best player in the team and allow Shea to do what he does offensively. So yep. I'm not sure the upgrade would be enough. And then you look at Jalen Williams. I mean, he does everything for them.
Right.
And then obviously you have Chet in the front court, and as Chet grows and can eventually stay healthy, you probably want to increase his shot load here. So it's hard to see how Tyler, although he's been willing to play different roles and spoke about how he came into the season expecting to play more off the ball and trained himself for it, then kind of got forced back and on the ball when Jimmy's stuff happened. It's hard to see Tyler flourishing there the way he did here. He'd basically be a big offensive upgrade on like a Caruso, I guess, right?
Right. He'd be a big offensive upgrade on a Caruso. So I don't think there's really a positional fit where they would be like, yeah, let's pull the trigger on that. But I could see San Antonio, for example, using Tyler in a way that would be very interesting. If you have a guy like Steph Castle and De'Aaron Fox, and you add like a Tyler Herro, because they use Vassell in a similar way that we use what the Miami Heat use Tyler Herro, I think he'd be an upgrade over Devin Vassell.
Yeah, I could see that. And I also, I think now that they're moving into a different era without Pop, I don't think maybe the fact Tyler's sort of defensive deficiencies, which I think would have driven Pop crazy. I don't know that that's as big an issue. Let me throw another team at you because I mentioned them earlier. Orlando is a team that I know has always had some interest in him, and they do need an offensive pop. Like I feel like if you're just talking about fit, I mean, Brooklyn's another one that's come up for him a lot, and they're transitioning into a different kind of team now. We don't know what they're going to look like, but right. Orlando is the one team that's a playoff team that I look at and I'm like, yeah, the other one is Detroit. Like Tyler would be a big upgrade over Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yes.
So those Detroit and Orlando would be the two in the East that I would look at.
Yeah, I agree with you. Detroit and Orlando would be very interesting. Orlando could really use that offensive output on the perimeter, and Tyler would have to do a whole lot less of creation with Franz and Paolo on that roster. And I think that would be a really, really good fit. Brooklyn's interesting because they don't really have a direction they're going. They're like rebuilding from scratch. So this leads me to my point. If you could make an offer that would include Tyler Herro to get you into, say, that Brooklyn pick at, like, let's say they land at 6, right? Say they have pick number 6 in the draft. If Trey Johnson was sitting there, I'm pulling the trigger on Trey Johnson. And we had that podcast we did where we profiled what the next, what do all the great guards typically coming out in these drafts have in common? The combine's not out yet, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Trey Johnson's going to fit every single one of those boxes that are that prototypical next best shooting guard that you can find.
So that's an interesting one. And like you said, I think that what the Heat have to look at, well, I said this before game 4, okay? If they lost by 37 and before they lost by 55, everything has to be on the table now.
Yes.
Like you can't, I think we're closer to that point. I think that's where the finality of it, the embarrassment of it, right, ultimately may serve to be a good thing, because there's no ambiguity about what happened at the end of the year. You can't blame it on this or that or this or that. The Jimmy stuff was way in the background by then. You were just completely overwhelmed. And so you can't make a case, I don't think, of just building around that. Now, the KD thing is the one thing, again, that at least you think about, because if the price is cheap enough, and I just did a pod with Yossi Goslin, who does a lot of salary cap stuff, and he'll probably have him on pod too. He doesn't think the price for Durant is also going to be very much. I've reported that the Heat offered basically at the deadline Jimmy's contract, Jovic, and a first. Okay. And Ishbia, the owner at the time, and now they've made a management shakeup where now James Jones is more of an advisory role, and they've Bartlestein, I think, still doing some business stuff, but they promoted this other guy, and they're going to have a new coach. So we don't know how that's going to look. And Chris Quinn's one of the coaches that they're going to be looking at, apparently, but which also could influence some things, because if he likes some of these players on the Heat roster, that's something else to talk about. Then if he ended up getting the coaching job, then maybe he'd have some influence there as well. Right. It might be easier to work out a deal. Although Ishbia seems to like to do all this stuff himself. And he had come back and said, well, no, we basically want everything. Now, I don't know what everything is, but my assumption is, like, where Jovic, Jaquez, Herro, Jaquez may not have the value had before, but multiple picks, multiple swaps, okay, and all that stuff. And the Heat were like, no, thank you. Okay, we're walking away from this. It's not even a conversation that we could have. Right. But there could be a conversation that it's had now, which if a team like Houston, and that's why actually as we're recording this, today's game matters a little bit. A team like Houston looks at it as like, all right, we got all these young players. Like, they got a ton of good young players. Yep. But do they have that, that guy yet? Okay. That Houston then says, okay, you know what? We'll trade 2 or 3 of our young players and go get KD. And if that's the case, the Heat don't have the young players to match the Rockets. But if Houston doesn't, it's really hard to see a team for Durant that's a fit right now. He didn't want to go to Golden State. He doesn't want to go back to some of the places he's been before. I mean, OKC would be great to see him end it there, and he would help them. But
that's what I was thinking.
Right, but I don't see it happening. I don't know if he would do that to not go back as the star. I don't even think there's restaurants there anymore. He used to be down the street for the arena, but it wasn't bad, actually. He had a pretty decent burger. But the thing is, I don't see that happening. So it's hard to see the fit for KD. Like, I don't see, like, Orlando could use his scoring, but he's not a front court fit with the group they have, because he'd have to play the 3, and I don't know defensively that he could do that with that group consistently anymore. So it may just be that there's no option for him. And right. If that's the case, then, Yossi was saying, you might not even need to give up Ware. And then if that's the case, then, then you pull the trigger and you see where it goes. But you still might lock yourself into a team that's not good enough.
Well, you would need a lead facilitating guard.
Yes.
Bad. A two-way facilitating lead guard. Really right. Bad with that team. Right. But it could work if you could pull that off. Right.
It could. And again, then it's like, are you going to play Davion 35 minutes? And there's also some financial issues that come into re-signing Davion if you make certain trades, and that has to be considered as well. Well, I'll put it this way, and I think it's a good topic for us to explore, and I think we'll get into it a little bit more. I just think all options have to be on the table here. And I agree. And you can't get into yourself. You can't, again, it's good that Tyler is not going to pull a Jimmy.
Right.
So you don't have the personality flare up to worry about here, but you also don't want to go into the season with more uncertainty. If I were him, if they offered 3 for 110 and said, here, we're going to give you this security, and whether or not you get hurt, because he played 75, 76 games this year, credit to him, but you don't know that's going to happen again. I would take it and just that's it. And then, at that contract, he'd be movable going forward, most likely.
Right.
Okay. Unless he had some kind of catastrophic injury. I mean, he'd be movable. So I think that's a good two-way deal for them to try to get to the middle on. And I'm not averse to keeping Tyler on the team. He's a good player, but you can't, not when you have a limited max guy already. You can't.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. You can't have 2 max players that are only one-way players.
Right.
Like Bam's a two-way player in the sense of he can facilitate for you as like a little bit of a hub. He could do a little bit of that. He's not going to be your main go-to guy where you just give him the ball and get out the way. And Tyler's not going to be able to defend anyone. Like literally in that Cleveland series, he could not defend anyone. Ty Jerome, nope. Garland, nope.
Right.
None of them.
It's true. And that's the problem too, is that it's not an effort thing with him. The credit I give him is he tries. It's never going to happen where he's going to be better than a 3 or 4 out of 10 on defense. It's just not. And that is something that has to be considered. It's not his fault. It is who he is. It is who he is. All right, Adel, appreciate it. We'll do more of this as we go forward, more draft episodes. We're going to start breaking this stuff down, particularly when the Chicago camp happens. And all of that we'll get into more specifically on what some of these players look like. The Heat pick 20th, and we'll have more NBA pods. Subscribe to Off the Floor, helps keep us going. Subscribe to Prize Picks, helps keep us going. You want content all summer long? Off the Floor is $2.99 per month, and Prize Picks gives you $50. So we're not asking for a lot. Have a good one, everybody.